Hello, everyone. It's Millie Metz back again with episode 2 of season 1, Ask an American. Today, I have the fabulous Isaac Cudjoe with me. He is a lover of information with zeal to make a constructive impact in the world. Coming from Bogoso, Ghana, at an early age, he has developed fervor for international affairs and politics. As a peace-building devotee, studying conflict resolution and coexistence at the Heller School for Social Policy and Management at Brandeis University, he seeks to aid societies in effectively managing diversity. Now, as co-founder and director of Return, he uses his platform to empower immigrants to consider the power they have and educate them on how they can continue to positively impact the places they come from. Amazing. And what just an amazing initiative. So I want to welcome Isaac onto our show. Hello.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Of course, we're so excited that you're joining us. Our listeners can't wait to learn all about you. So, as you know, our first season is based on immigrants and the immigrant edition. So, to that end, will you walk us through your immigration experience?
I probably represent a specific type of immigrant, a story that might be familiar with a lot of millennial immigrants, where I was the beneficiary of being the youngest in my family at the time when my parents won a diversity lottery opportunity to come to the United States. They opted to take me as the youngest in the family, and I came along with them. Originally, my dad came to the States first, and then my mom and I joined him shortly after. And I've been in the U.S. I've stayed all over the East Coast, but really I'd say that I've lived in Maryland the longest. And Maryland is where I would call home, and most of my development has happened. Yeah.
All right. So, an East Coaster through and through. It sounds like you are currently in Boston. So, tell our audience kind of what brought you up north.
So really, I was interested. I took a year off between undergrad and grad school because I really wanted my search for graduate schools to be purposeful, to be intentional. I wanted a program that I could say wholeheartedly that the professors and the faculty and even the staff and everybody, even my cohort, really cared about my development as a young man. Um, and I did an intensive search where I would go to the library every day for a summer where pretty much there were days where I'd go to the library and I wasn't studying at all. I would just sit there. I'd take my nieces and nephew and just be in that space to think about that next step and that next journey. So when I narrowed down my list of schools, I eventually visited Brandeis University's the Heller School. And when I got there, it was almost like, this is it. But I think it really clicked for me when I had a phone conversation with one of my program directors, Sandra Jones, who called me when I was leaving work, was about to get on the train, and she called me, and I had asked her a simple question of, why did you accept me? And she said, she really believed in me. She really believed in the person that I'm going to become. And she gave me the most sincere answer anybody has ever given me in terms of why they wanted me to be a part of their family or their team. It was a no-brainer to me. I packed my bags and I moved up to Waltham, Massachusetts, which is maybe 20 minutes outside of Boston. Great little town. And yeah.
That's fantastic. So I love that you used the word family because, I think that's something that binds us universally. So no matter where you're from, no matter what your immigration status or your citizenship status, whatever the case may be, right? We sort of this idea linked to family. So will you share with us, what is it that you think of when you think of the word family? Sort of how do you define that? What makes someone family to you? How do you know you're in someone's family?
I think there's a moment, sometimes you don't realize it, but there's this almost aha moment of clarity when you realize that someone sincerely and genuinely cares about your livelihood, your everyday struggle, the good, the bad. They're just there for you during the journey. um, and the intentionality is a bit different than strangers. It's people who check in on you, who support you, who pray for you, who call on you for help as well. I think family is a journey, not some destination, but people join your family along the way. And just like biological families, there are some who are closer than others, but you still remember them as family because of obstacles that you've gone through together. And you know that the moment you pick up your phone right now and you call them, that they'll pick up that same familiar voice, that same familiar attitude, ready to welcome you back home. So I think for me, family is the people in this world that have become your comrades on this journey. We're all fighting different battles, but they are your comrades that you are, and some of them may go off into different skirmishes, but at the end of the day, you fought a piece of this journey with them.
So there are a couple of things that I heard there that was so resonant for me, as some of our listeners know, and some of them might be just learning. I am actually Indian American. And so for me, growing up in a place like India, we often refer to our neighbors or people who are not in any way blood related to us as auntie and uncle, right? So there is a lot of
Mm-hmm.
kinship for us historically, and for me specifically, that really supersedes the family tie in the way of biological or even by marriage or adoption or any kind of family relationship. Um,
Right.
is it similar for you being Ghanaian? Is that part of the culture where you come from too?
Yeah, I think growing up, I became accustomed to having to call people uncle and aunts, um, that nobody could explain to me how they were really related to me. And I think I was always brought up to have a reverence for people that were elders,
Mm-hmm.
regardless if there was any biological connection. Um, and I think being an immigrant, especially, I wouldn't even say just Ghanaian, but being an immigrant growing up, I think I gravitated towards people who had a similar story to me, who whose parents had a similar story to mine. You almost sought out people who had a shared struggle, and I feel like immigrants gravitate towards each other. And at least that's what I experienced in this country. I didn't think that it was my Ghanaian heritage that was calling me for familiar faces in unfamiliar places. Someone who wore something just like me, even if it was from a different country, or just understood why I didn't do a certain thing.
Mm-hmm.
To me, those emerged as I'm looking for family. They became my brothers and my sisters, even though we may have never crossed paths if we didn't come to this country.
So really, you use the term shared struggle, and I think that is something that folks have such resonance to. It's not about being just like you or looking like you or necessarily,
Mhm.
sharing language or sharing food. Having that history of being the other, of coming from a place that maybe um, not even misunderstood, but just unknown, right?
Yeah,
And kind
yeah,
of what that means to then assimilate into, acculturate into, adapt into the mainstream.
right.
And of course, the mainstream in Maryland versus Massachusetts isn't exactly the same either. I mean, even
Mhm.
regionally in the US, there are some pretty significant changes to how people behave and what they expect of one another.
Yeah.
And so, would you say having that immigrant experience in some ways makes you more well versed when it comes to travel? Is there an aspect to sort of moving around that feels more natural to you?
I think, and I can't speak for all immigrants, but I'll say for me in particular, I have always been curious about the unknown, whether that's traveling or whether that's an author I've never read. I think something about coming to this country at a young age and seeing the stark differences between here and my country. And, every time I go back to Ghana and I see the way things are and I come back here, people ask me, is there an adjustment? I've told them that I don't think there's an adjustment anymore. I think I've perfected the idea that I understand that there's two different societies and there are similarities and there are differences, but it it almost makes me wonder, what is Canada like? What is Switzerland like? What is Australia like? What is India, like, and I think being an immigrant gives me that curiosity of what else is out there that I don't know about, and how different is it from the place that I'm from.
And so therein lies so much of a curiosity and a desire to engage with the diaspora, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
tell us a little bit about what drew you to sort of the work that you are doing now, everything from walk us to coming into making the documentary to then kind of developing and shaping a movement.
Yeah, so I love sharing this because I think every single time I talk about it, I end up remembering a part of it that I didn't realize. I have these aha moments myself, and a few months ago, March, I was a participant in the Young African Leaders Initiative, the RLC Regional Center in Ghana, and I was the only American based applicant to have gone. And I was there with people from 9 different other West African countries, and I was in awe listening to their stories, hearing a little bit about what motivates them and what they're working on right now. And I finished the experience thinking to myself that, wow, there is a disconnect. There's a disconnect between particularly West African diaspora and West African living in the context,
Mm-hmm.
specifically youth movements that are happening.
Mm-hmm.
In that time, that 3 week time that I was being trained, I learned of so many movements that I had never heard of before. And it dawned on me that there needs to be a platform or something to kind of bring people back together. And through conversations that I was having growing up, just reflecting, there's my friends and I, we have this group message, we call it Young Kings. And we always talk about society, life, sports, everything. And one of the things that came up not too long ago was the struggle of being an African immigrant in this country. And we shared about, a few of us in the group message that were coming from sub-Saharan Africa shared about the bullying that we faced while we were growing up. We talked about how, there was a lot of people that disgraced us, shunned us, alienated us, and made us feel like the other in so many ways. And somehow, some way, those people have become the ones that are more curious about who we are now. Um, and we talked about how there needs to be a reconciliation on both parties, where we realize that, like, the past is the past and we've grown from it, and it's a beautiful thing that people are now interested in my culture and my roots and my heritage.
Mm-hmm.
But from that, I realized that a lot of the times when we tell the story of immigration, we tell the stories of the places that we come from, and we get upset when we hear that CNN didn't report about this in Sudan or didn't report about this in Sierra Leone. I realized when I was coming back that, like, that onus comes back to me too. I should be the representative for the places that I come from, just as much as I expect the media to speak on those places. I shouldn't, my motivation should be, wow, the news, National Geographic just highlighted Ghana in a terrible way. My motivation should be, from this day forward, I'm going to make sure that everybody knows the good that is happening in my country as well. And so from those conversations came this desire to create this platform and to create this initiative to really give diaspora a chance to reconnect. But also through that, there needs to be accountability that happens as well. Sometimes we think just because we've left the places that we're from, we are now the smartest people in those places, but that's a complete lie. It's absolutely 100% a lie that we are the smartest people, because sometimes the person going through the pain is the best person to explain that pain to you. There's a reason why doctors say, tell me what's going on today. It doesn't matter if you come in with a broken hand, the doctor can
Mm-hmm.
see, the doctor will still ask, because we need to know how you feel and how you want to move forward about it. And so me and a couple people, Violet is a dynamic woman that I met in grad school, who motivated me to take the documentaries that we were working on and turn it into a movement. And at first, it started off as this light conversation where I was inviting her to be a part of the documentary, part two. And part two's intentionality was to bring people from all over the world, diaspora, to discuss what their role is in the context that they're coming from and their role in international affairs at large. And I was really sitting down with her to say, I want you to be a part of this documentary. And we started discussing that. And I realized that she was sharing sentiments that I share to other people. And I thought, this really is a global phenomenon. This isn't a Ghanaian experience thing. This isn't a
Absolutely.
West African thing. This is a global thing. So we decided that we would launch Return as a movement, to create a coalition of diaspora who are also partnered with people living in the context to really re-engage them, um, and keep them accountable and give them the platform and the support. Because it's easy to say that you need to be accountable. But if I'm really your friend and I really love you, I'll help you do those things.
Mm.
So Return is saying to diaspora, we know you want to go back. We see it happening every December. We see where your money is going in remittances.
Mm-hmm.
We know you're interested in not necessarily going back as in living there, but being engaged and being connected. Now, we want to make sure that we give you the tools where you can say that I really actually made change in the places that I come from, so that, the next generation isn't running from the problems there. They have concrete solutions. So that's really where Return is right now in terms of working with diaspora and more.
What a phenomenal sort of trajectory, right? Could you have imagined as that young boy being bullied and sort of mistreated, for lack of a better term, to now being in a space of empowerment and more than yourself being empowered, really passing the baton and making it your life's work? I think it's fair to say, right? To
Right, right.
continue to get people engaged and immersed and reconnected. I mean,
Mhm.
Return to me really seems embedded in this notion of let's redefine home, because it isn't
Yeah.
even about going home or running from home. It's sort of
Mhm.
this idea of like, how can I contribute and continue to represent what
Mhm.
home means?
Yeah. Mhm.
So I, uh, I don't know. As I hear you talk about this, it seems to me that you're at such a young age, it's such an early part in your career, already such a roaring success because you've sort of figured out what you want to do, right? So tell us, how do you define that word? Because I think often in the US, we get very hung up on, and even immigrants get very, very hung up on defining success in really narrow terms, which
Mhm.
often is wealth, right? Which often
Mhm.
is really money. But
Mhm.
that is a really, that's tunnel vision. Of
Right.
course, we need money to survive and to,
Right.
succeed without money is challenging. But to define success purely as just financial is incredibly limiting. So
Mhm.
my question to you then, Isaac, is how do you define success?
I think my definition of success comes from my belief that, and I always tell people this, even while you were talking, 100%, I believe that everything that I've done is not my own, but I believe that, I am a broken person.
Mm,
And sometimes when we say that, people think that it is a flaw, but I think we
mhm.
are all intentionally broken because other people are supposed to fill us up,
Yeah.
those holes and those things that we aren't able to achieve, or those moments where it seems like there's that hurdle mentally that we need to get over. People are in our lives for a reason. And when I say that, Violet, Amos, the Heller School, my director, Sandra Jones, so many more, all these people are a part of my success story. And I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for surrounding myself with both like minded and people who have very different opinions than me to
Mhm.
actually challenge me. So I think also my definition of success comes from, my evaluation of success of even the place that I'm from. Right now, Ghana is one of the world's second largest cocoa producers behind Ivory Coast. They're also Africa's biggest gold miners after South Africa. It's one of the continent's fastest growing economies, and it's made major progress. But poverty is still endemic in Ghana.
Absolutely.
And, 185 maternal deaths per 100,000 live births by 2000 in 2015. So, when we talk about success, it's not necessarily that I will I will hit all these benchmarks and not have flaws. It's that I have to constantly continue working on bettering myself and bettering the people around me and bettering the place I'm from. For me, success is this journey of life that we all don't have the answers, but some of us have these pieces. We all have a piece of a puzzle. And I think my success, when it's all said and done, will be, did I make sure that my puzzle piece was where it needed to be to help someone else figure out the puzzle, for the next generation to figure out the puzzle, because we're all just pieces of a bigger puzzle and we have to do our part. So I think regardless of money, regardless of benchmarks, or regardless of how good my resume will look one day, I think it's more so about, did I earnestly, wholeheartedly, can I say that my puzzle piece was on the board, ready to go, helping someone figure out the next step?
That's powerful. I think your honesty in highlighting that idea that we are all broken, I think that is sincerely the truth, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that it's purposeful. It's not that we're all broken because we're bad or we're damaged or our parents didn't love us or
Right.
insert explanation here, right?
Right.
But just by intention, we're broken in order to be able to connect and contribute and be a part of a community that's larger than just our individual selves.
Yeah.
So I really think this sort of collectivist attitude is something that most immigrant cultures share.
Mm-hmm.
At the core, wherever you come from, in order to have arrived here on these shores, something bigger than you pushed and motivated that to happen.
Yeah.
And once you arrived here, you were then faced with the choice of developing a more individualistic and independent way of thinking, which is more of the mainstream, traditionally American ideology,
Mm-hmm.
or finding a way to integrate parts of that that are helpful, that are important in setting boundaries and right healthy coping
Yeah.
and things like that that are really valuable, um, and using that to return in whatever context, whether
Mm-hmm.
it's to a place or to a person, to create that meaningful connection. And as you beautifully said, as the puzzle piece, like your job is to show up on the board and to be available for the other pieces to fit around you.
Yeah.
In a vacuum kind of don't mean that much. And that said, if all the pieces are put together and you're the one piece that's missing, guess what? The puzzle isn't complete.
Yep.
So that is really such a beautiful description of how each of us here in the world matters so much. And recognizing also, right, there are thousands of puzzles out there.
Yeah.
I think your success is in identifying this is the puzzle in which you are a piece and kind of readily appearing on that table, whether it's hanging out on the side trying to get put in, or like climbing into the center of the board and being like, you guys get around, like I'm here, show up, like step up, right? So I think puzzle pieces also lend themselves to this idea um, of love and partnership. And I don't just mean love in a romantic sense, but to to love someone and to love people, we have to have certain beliefs and ideas about love. And I think
Yeah.
love is one of those words, especially in the US, that we throw around quite a bit, right? Like
Right.
we're
Right.
notorious globally for, we love our shoes, we love our pets, we love Jennifer Aniston's new hairdo, right?
Yeah.
What does that mean though? Like when you use the word love and when you think about love, and of course, I fully appreciate that love isn't the same across the board. Sort of romantic love, platonic love, those might look a little bit different. But
Mhm.
how would you define it? How would you define love?
So for me, I draw my um, my moral and religious upbringing. As a Christian, I've been taught that God is love, and for me, that is an all-encompassing statement. For me, there is no shortage to that love, and it's a love that I can't match, but I will try my best to. It's, when you say God, who I believe is infinite, is
Mm-hmm.
love, that means that love should be infinite, that there shouldn't be a moment where I stop loving. If I say that I love something, that I should love it wholeheartedly. That doesn't mean that you can't discipline something you love, but I think when I use love, and I'm trying to become better at it too, I'm 100% not perfect at this, but I think the way that I'm striving to understand, appreciate, and truly show love is through the sincerity, like I said, of actions and emotions. And I think the best example in terms of an immigrant story that I can share is my mom, who, she came to this country with me when I was very young, but she also had four other kids living back in Ghana that she needed to bring over as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until about a week ago that she shared with me the details of what really went into bringing the rest of my family here. And she said that every day she would work from Monday through Thursday, 10-hour shifts. And there was this young lady that would drop her home. And she said it was a really young lady, maybe around 18, have to work together. And one day she said she was crying, and the young lady said, "Nancy, what's wrong? What's going on?" She said, the young lady said, "What? We're going to go to Baltimore, and I'm going to get you the forms you need to apply for you to get your children here." And in this story, I tell people this now to remind them that in this moment we're in America, this political climate we're in, where people are consistently telling immigrants of all kinds that they should have applied for this, they should have done this. I simply want people to know that if you truly care, if you truly have compassion, you truly love your neighbor, that you'll go the extra mile to teach them what they do not know. Because that simple act of love and kindness of that young lady transformed the landscape of my family to where it is now, where all my siblings are here with me, and I have nieces and nephews and things and all sorts that have been born because of someone showing that love, that infinite love of saying, not only am I going to get the forms for you, but I'm going to drive there with you, and I'm going to make sure that you learn how to do it. So, how I define love is that genuineness. That young lady, we don't remember her name, we don't remember how tall she is or what color hair she had, we don't remember any of those things, but we know that she showed us love. We won't forget that love. So for me, love is the size of a dinosaur's print. No matter what we do, it'll be there. It is huge. Dinosaurs are gone, but we still find evidences of them. Love is infinite. So I think as an immigrant, I want to show that love, but I hope that Americans, as we all have become or are becoming, will show that love to each other. So that's big for me.
Absolutely. I mean, so much of what I'm hearing is really the resonance of being present, of sharing knowledge, right? Because that young woman who helped your mom, she really reflected on the fact that your mom didn't know, and she
Mm-hmm.
made it her business, right, to step out of whatever comfort zone she might have inhabited at that moment to reach out and help your mom, and by extension your entire family.
Yeah.
Even you
Yeah.
today are so affected by the ripple effect of that one act of
Right.
love.
Yeah.
So I think that that's so profound. But I also believe that brings us to a space that, lends itself to me asking you the question I ask every person that comes on this show. What words or word would you describe to define the title American? What does that mean when I say American?
I think when I hear that word or when I use that word, I think more now than ever. If you asked me this question maybe 4 years ago, my answer would have been different. But now I'd say that to me, being American is admitting mistakes, acknowledging that people have hurt, showing empathy through action. Sometimes we say that we're being empathetic by simply acknowledging that someone is hurting. No, empathy through action is saying, wow, these people didn't realize that this is the formal way they needed to go about it. I'm going to be empathetic through action by showing them going that extra mile. I think that there's many cases in America's history where there have been people who have acknowledged their mistakes, gone out their way to almost show a sincerity in that apology of, I messed up and I'm willing to go the extra mile to fix this. And I think that's the type of America that I hold on to dearly, is where we're always going to make mistakes. It's not an American thing, it's a human thing. We make mistakes all the time, but to be able to say proudly that I am owning up to the fact that I have made mistakes and I've hurt you and I'm willing to atone for it. And there needs to be some type of restoration to this relationship. So to me, when I say I'm American, I want to embody that in saying that we can live in a country that people are aware was founded on the persecution, the killings, and the hurting of other people, other human beings, and know that we've taken so many steps forward. Yes, we've also taken some steps back and sideways, but we've taken steps forward. And I think that the steps forward is what I'm holding on to as an American, and knowing that we will progress. The ball will keep rolling if we do our part as citizens, if we work hard, if we if we are involved in elections. Um, to me, that is American. American is doing your part. Simply put, it's doing your part and being empathetic through action, not simply through watching a video and putting the crying emoji, but getting up and saying, I'm going to do more than that. I'm going to work through my restitution, my atonement, my love. Being American is that to me.
Isaac, thank you so much. I really have appreciated our time together. I'm so grateful for the work that you're doing. It's really been an honor to connect in this way. And I know all of our listeners are going to be not only impressed with you, but hopefully invigorated by hearing your voice and learning your story. Of course, everything will be the links and all the other good stuff that you shared is going to be in our show notes. So folks can click on that and don't have to worry that they've missed anything. I really appreciate you and your time. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. All right, everyone. This is Millie Metz signing out. Till next time, I will be popping back on with some new and exciting immigrant stories. Bye for now.